Yep.
Okay, awesome. All right. So thank you for being here with me today. And the floor is yours. Take it over.
Yeah.
If you could tell us.
Hi, my name's Boone Van Zura. I'm a National Park Ranger, so I work for the federal government. I've been a National Park Ranger for 26 years. I got my start in Penn State University. I was a recreation and leisure major, so recreation and parks, other schools have that. And I wanted to work outdoors and I wanted to teach people. So I got into the field. I worked in Walt Disney World. I worked at a resort in Florida. And then my brother was working in Yellowstone National Park. And I went out and volunteered with him for 4 months. And I was like, wow, that's a good job. And what I volunteered doing is my brother Matt was a backcountry ranger. And so he was a law enforcement ranger that patrolled back in the woods where people go and camp. So whether they would hike in or boat in or ride a horse into campsites in the backcountry, he would hike or he would do the same thing. And he would patrol the campsites and say hi to people, make sure they're following the fishing regulations, make sure they're following the backcountry regulations so as to protect our national parks. So I did that with my brother for 2 months. Just loved it. So that's how I kind of got started. And then I quit a job that was full-time with health and medical benefits to say, welcome to Yellowstone. And I worked at the entrance station. So I started at the entry-level position and then worked my way up into law enforcement. And now currently, I'm the Chief Ranger of Cape Hatteras National Seashore. So that's a National Park Service unit in North Carolina. Nags Head, North Carolina is what everyone thinks about. And I'm the Chief Ranger there. And that means I'm in charge of all of the law enforcement rangers here. So 17 of us. And then the fee collection operations, which includes our 4 campgrounds, the Wright Brothers National Memorial, the collecting of the entrance fees, the fees collected in our off-road vehicle program, and the fees collected in our lighthouse. So as the Chief Ranger, I have 2 different branches that I'm responsible for.
Okay. Awesome. So you mentioned you started working at Yellowstone at the entry, and now you're working as a chief. What other like careers or positions are there within the park ranger field that students could be interested in looking in?
Yeah, so the Park Service is so different parks. There's like 423 National Park Service units, give or take.
Okay.
Whether it's Yellowstone National Park, whether it's Yosemite, whether it's Ford's Museum, whether it is the seashore, the Great Sand Dunes, Washington, D.C. and the mall. So a lot of different jobs. And I'll give a place like Cape Hatteras National Seashore. So you can be a law enforcement ranger. You can be a ranger that works in resource management and helps take care of our sea turtles and shorebirds. You could be an interpretive ranger that does the walks and the talks and educates people out of our visitor centers. You can be a scientist that studies the sea turtles and shorebirds and does surveys. You can be a maintenance worker that is our plumbers, our electricians, the ones that work on our historic buildings like the lighthouse. So you can be a historical contractor, but you can also, we have bathrooms. So we have National Park Service staff that are maintenance staff that clean the bathrooms. And then all of the support functions to take care of those. So we have business office staff, secretaries, people that pay us, people that make sure we're following all the federal policies, you know what I mean, all the pay rates. And then, so sort of like all of the jobs in between. So national parks are in that they have a ton of different jobs, and you can get started and then you sort of get your feet on the door. I got started by being a volunteer, where I just volunteered for 2 months and I'm like, hey, I like this. So then when I applied, I had that on my job application so that they could talk to other Park Service rangers that I had worked with. Nothing wrong with working for Food Lion or a local pizza place, but if you work at a Food Lion, I don't know if you have Food Lions in Michigan. You know, here,
No. A grocery store like
well,
Meijer,
you got,
Kroger?
what they want to work at? Myers?
Yeah.
Well, nonetheless, if you worked at a grocery store that's common, then you could apply to all the rest of the ones in that area. And they're like,
Right.
wow, okay, because you have similar experiences and you work for the company. So I got started as a volunteer. You can start at, they have a lot of summer jobs, and all the jobs are available on usajobs.government. So usajobs.government is where you can go online and look for jobs from North Carolina to Alaska, and doing jobs from answering the phones to working with sea turtles to painting to working in the entrance, working in our campgrounds, just a whole lot of opportunities there.
Awesome. Is there a baseline education that is needed to work in the national parks? Or because I know there's such a range of career opportunities. And like yourself, you got your degree from Penn State, but as someone that would want to maybe volunteer in the parks and then work their way up to a park ranger, would they have to get a degree, or is a high school diploma efficient enough?
Yeah, so it depends upon your different job that you're applying for.
Okay.
So I'm a law enforcement ranger. There's other rangers that are the biologists. So you can start off as a entry-level biologist that you just need high school and you can be in college. But if they see you're in college and you're in environmental studies, I mean, whether that's birds or sea turtles or something like that, then they would be like, oh, they have an interest in birds and sea turtles. They don't necessarily need their degree yet, but then they're like, okay, because we have people that drive out on our beaches every day and look for sea turtles. And they can be in college and that's their major line, or you could just be a high school student that wants a job and you don't want to work at a pizza place. But if you're working on a degree, it's definitely better, but you don't need it to begin. The managers, different story, the ones that are running the studies or the shorebird nesting surveys, then they might need a bachelor's degree. In law enforcement, most of us do, but it's not required at this time. So there's a lot of different things that can be considered rangers. I'm a law enforcement ranger.
Okay, good to know. Can you talk a little bit about what your day-to-day life looks like as a park ranger, and how you were able to have a family during that? Like, is that something that anyone can have, or is that a concern that you had going into this field?
Yeah, so I'll tell you what I'm doing now and then what I did as a patrol ranger.
Okay.
So right now I'm sort of upper level management. So I manage people that manage like people. So I'm on our management team. So I work with the superintendent and the chief of maintenance and the chief of resource and the chief of administration and so that we're all the managers of the town, if you will. And then underneath that, we have supervisors that then supervise the 30 people and 25 people. So I supervise supervisors. So I go to meetings all day long is what I do.
Yeah.
And I try to get out into the park one day a week. But I shuffle papers and I take care of people. and look at policy and looks at ways to improve the park, if you will. Enforcement patrol ranger, you would have a vehicle and you would just drive around on the beaches and talk to people, say hi, how they're doing, see what they're up to, so as to protect the resources. So you would have a law enforcement degree and you have an area that you would patrol, but you would basically drive up and down the beaches, and then in our picnic areas, in our campgrounds, and around our lighthouses, so as to just see what people are doing and just sort of general patrol. In the National Park Service, we believe in community policing, which means we're just out visiting with our visitors that are coming down, because they come from all over.
Mm-hmm.
However, they're not necessarily familiar with the rules of the National Park Service,
Right.
meaning that whether keeping dogs off leash, whether areas that are closed off because of our nesting shorebirds or sea turtles. People are like, well, that's kind of weird. I want to walk down on the beach. I should be able to walk here. And I drove from Pennsylvania, so I'm going to go walk through here. And we're like, nah, that disturbs the birds.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to educate people on rules that are not typically what they would encounter, if you will.
For sure. Yeah. So what are other like common issues in the fields that community members should know about or get involved to resolve the conflicts? Just educate themselves on the policies and rules in that national park, or what else could they do?
Yeah, so what we do is we'll educate the visitors. We're federal law enforcement officers. So as National Parks Rangers, people see us as friendly park rangers. And that's what we want. We're a very loved agency. However, we also deal with the folks that are driving drunk. You know what I mean? The folks that are on vacation and they get in fights with the people that they're with, or folks in the local community that are selling drugs on that. We like to think about the beautiful beaches and the lighthouses, and everyone's having a good time and enjoying themselves.
Mm-hmm.
However, people bring with them their issues on vacation, and then we need to deal with that appropriately and take them to jail, and then they would go to like federal court, if you will. So if you violated a law in the state, it's held at the state level. Ours are federal violations, so we would take them through the federal court system, if you will. So ideally, everyone's enjoying themselves, having a good time. If not, then we're the ones that would be like, hey, guess what? Put your hands behind your back. You're going to jail. And so that's not uncommon,
Mm-hmm.
unfortunately.
Yeah. Okay. How about, what's your biggest piece of advice that you would have for someone or a student looking into a future career in this field?
Yeah, I would say do it. It's a good federal job, and it's a federal job that you have that you can transfer all over. I have friends that have worked in 12 different National Park Service.
Oh, wow.
So picture being able to be like, hey, I want to go live in Florida for a few years.
Yeah.
And if you get good evaluations and apply for jobs, you can go work in Florida. So I could go be a boat patrol ranger in Florida. Then I could say, hey, you know what? I want to go up and I want to patrol on a river, and you can work on a riverway and patrol or paddle a canoe. If you're like, you know what? My kids are ready for school, or I want to go work in Washington, D.C. and get a cultural experience, I can do that. Or I can be at a small unit that is like a couple buildings, like Martin Luther King's home, that you're like, wow, it's like 4 buildings in the town of Atlanta and you can be in the city. And all of those jobs, whether you're patrolling, we all have to get paid. So we have to have someone that takes care of our payroll. We all have buildings, so there's janitors and different things. They all don't necessarily have a resource background for like wildlife, but it might be historic buildings and things.
Sure.
But there are interpretive rangers at each one of those facilities telling about why the Park Service unit is significant to the United States. So there are a lot of general duties that they have at all of them, so that you can work all over the place, or like myself, I actually spent 21 years in Yellowstone. And I was able to move around and do different jobs in that park because it was very large. So I started off in the entrance first, then I was in the entrance station, then I worked in the campground. Then I went and got my law enforcement commission so that I could be a police officer, if you will, a National Park Service ranger. Then I patrolled the backcountry for 6 years, riding a horse, paddling, hiking. Then I went to the front country and worked in the lake area and drove a patrol car, an ambulance, and fire truck. Then I became a supervisor and went over to Old Faithful and worked for 2 years as a supervisor. Then I went over to Canyon, the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone, and was an even higher level supervisor. I was the district ranger. Then I went to park headquarters and was in charge of the EMS program in Yellowstone, where I oversaw like 110 EMS providers and 10 ambulances. So that's what I did. And then I family up, and we did have children when we were in Mammoth, and there were schools around the area. But I literally moved to park headquarters so that our children could go to kindergarten. We started at Canyon, and we were homeschooling them. And then we're like, teachers, they're amazing, you know? And after about, 6 months of that, we're like, yeah, we need to go to a school to have someone teach our children rather than us teaching them themselves and homeschooling. So we moved again to be near a school. And then once we were in high school, the high school they were in, they were in middle school, and there were 7 kids in their grade. In their whole grade, not just their classroom, but their whole grade had 7 children. So we're like, okay, you know what? There's not a lot of diverse experiences there. And we were driving 53 miles to have Ellie get violin lessons. Or if we had a home soccer game, it was there. If not, we were driving a minimum of 53 miles to go to a soccer game, kids t-ball, basketball, So then we're like, we're going to move out east. And now there's 112 kids in their grade. And they had a whole lot of different opportunities they were able to get here in North Carolina. So just a lot of different opportunities in the Park Service. And then your years of experience transfer with the different National Park Service units you work at. So that you can get a wide variety of experience, and you can start off being a ranger at the campground, and I could have switched over to be an interpretive ranger or to be a scientist, and I could just move around because my years of experience still count. So it's just a great federal job with a lot of different opportunities. The Michigan National Park Service unit that's right down the street.
For sure. Awesome. I think we cut out for a little bit. Okay, here we're back. Okay. Thank you for sharing. That's all the questions I have. Are there any other things you would like to add, or we can call it?
So generally, you need to be 18 to get into a federal job, and also clean record's important. You know what I mean? So don't get things for being arrested wise and different things. Recognize that it's a great job, but there is a background that all federal employees need to go through. But it's a wonderful opportunity. It was great to raise a family. You can switch around and move different jobs depending upon your family life, meaning that when I was married but had no children, I was working night shifts and being away at night a lot. But then once I'm like, hey, nope, I want to be home for the kids and the family, then I switched to a day job so that when the kids are in school, I was working. So a lot of different opportunities, and it's been great. Thank you. Folks, have any questions, by all means, they can email me. My email address is Boone, so it's BOONE _Vanzura, VANDZURA at NPS.gov. That stands for the National Park Service.government. And I can answer questions for them, answer sort of hiring type of questions, or just general questions about the National Park Service. I'd love to do it and enjoy it. We have a lot of jobs, and there's want to get folks sort of started in our National Park Service unit.
Thank you so much. It's so eye-opening to see all the different opportunities that are in this field. I didn't even know there were all these different levels, or your whole path of just being in Yellowstone alone, like all the different positions you took on. So that's great. Thank you so much for sharing. And I will be sure to pass this along to my students. Okay.
Yeah. Yes, you're very welcome, and call anytime, and I can fill them in. Thank you.